Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. My guest today is Matt Singh. Matt is the Director of Operational Excellence and Master Black Belt for the Department of Administrative Services in the state of Nebraska. Over the last 20 years, he has previously served in a variety of progressive management roles, including sales and service, operations, and supply chain. He is certified as a Master Black Belt in Six Sigma, Master Black Belt in Lean Six Sigma, certified as a Lean Sensei, and holds the Project Management Professional or PMP credential. He's also a returning guest, so he was with us back in episode 54 of season 1. So if you're interested to go back and listen in at his earlier interview, you can definitely do that. But let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Yeah, it's great to be back again. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for this next discussion. It's been a while since you and I have connected, but we had such a great discussion about process improvement in the state government, specifically in the state of Nebraska, and some of the other things that are happening, both in state and local government. But I wanted to ask you, because you do have a vast amount of experience, not just in the state of Nebraska or in state government, but also in many other areas as well. Overall, what do you think are some of the important elements of a successful process improvement program?
Yeah, that's a great question. Over the years, had the opportunity to be a part or create several different programs, and I think there's about two major underlying kind of conditions that allow for success. There's several other factors, but the two that really stuck out in my mind are showing value. So continuous improvement exists to increase value for team members, employees, for customers, for really everybody. However, it's one thing to actually create the value, to show the value. It's another to communicate that value to the people that you're trying to help with change management for. If you're working with patrol or police officers or the legal system, that might look one way. If you're dealing with social workers, Department of Agriculture, any kind of unique, nuanced agency, it can look very different. So I think the practitioner's goal should be to figure out how to best communicate the value that's being created. We've seen situations where, you might have done 30 projects, but we haven't figured out how to talk about them, so it's not getting the buy-in you're looking for. Or you can do 3 projects, really help communicate the value it added, and the change management becomes really simple. Which kind of leads into the second bullet point, is simplicity. I know this industry, we're all guilty of it at one time or another, tried to make it complicated, whether we learned it that way or whether we've seen it work that way. But what I found in my personal journey is that the simpler you can make it, the more likely not only are they going to adapt it, but they're going to sustain it. Mm-hmm. So if they see the value, like, hey, this can improve my productivity by this much, or this can increase my efficiency by this much, and you make it simple for them, so the very first time they try to do it, there's some successes, that tends to lead to some very strong programs.
Absolutely. Now, those are two really good points. There's a big, I don't know if I would say there's a big difference, but I mean, obviously you're working in state government. And so, in comparison to, some of our listeners are working in the manufacturing industry or in the healthcare industry. And so those two bullets, obviously those make sense no matter what industry that you're working in, which is how a lot of lean, principles obviously work. Specifically for you guys, you mentioned projects. Can you just give us maybe a couple examples of what improvement projects might look like at the state level when it comes to your process improvement program?
Yeah, absolutely. We function at a lot of different levels in terms of continuous improvement. We believe that everything from the frontline staff using basic core root problem solving tools and visual management, all the way up to certified lean leaders who do, projects that are probably 2 or 3 days, but it's something really vital to that work area. We have full-time practitioners at the Greenbelt level that do it full-time, and they do projects generally for an agency on, a pain point that they're working on, operational, financial, or political. And then we have black belt projects, which function at the highest level across the enterprise. Usually the governor's office is the sponsor for it. Those can take anywhere, from 6 months to 2 years.
Mm.
And we do all that. I think that one of the ones that I'm really proud of in the last couple of years is a one-stop portal project. Then Governor Ricketts was receiving some feedback from citizens that it was very difficult to pursue their entrepreneurial goals with several, having to reach out to several agencies, several different paperworks, or they call them filings. And so what was created is we partner with IT, the governor's office, and all the agencies to figure out what all the filings does an entrepreneur need to know, and then we place them in a one-stop shop. So if you're trying to start a business in Nebraska, you can just go to the website and a couple of drop-down menus, and I'll show you everything you need with links that directly take you there. So I thought that was a really cool kind of user design, kind of improving the overall experience for the customer, kind of improvement. Other ones, we have some less fun to talk about ones over the years too. Billing processes, whether that be Department of Transportation, streamlining their billing process or their payment processes, everything from ensuring that there's higher quality and on-time results from lab testing for the courts. It can take a lot of forms, even frontline stuff. I'm thinking of building division here at Administrative Services. They have a really neat visual management board right across the hallway. It's a Kanban. It's a swim lane. And on the swim lane, it has the different projects they're working on, but they also put the time, the amount of time that it's been in that particular section of the Kanban, which has increased the overall productivity by over 50% on all projects. And these are, all pretty big projects. So I think it can be applied a lot of different ways. And I think that's the strength of the approaches that allow for kind of different application of tools and ideas.
Absolutely. And every one of those projects ties right into those 2 points that you made around those elements that help make a successful process improvement program. So super powerful. What are some of the results that you guys are seeing with these projects? I mean, are there some metric improvements that you guys have been able to realize real numbers, or do you guys track that at the state government level? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we practice largely Lean Six Sigma, and we do other stuff too, Lean and theory of constraint stuff. But a large majority of them are to make projects in Lean Six Sigma world. We use voice of the customer. So we go out and we talk to all the customers, the upstream, downstream, internal, external, the people that do the process, the people that receive the process. We talk to all of them and we ask them the same, 5-6 questions with follow-up questions, trying to pinpoint, basically simply put, what's good about the process and what needs improved.
Mm-hmm.
Then we create they're called CCRs. It's a type of requirement gathering, but essentially it's this needs improved by 50%. This needs decreased by 30%. It's a very clear goal to shoot for. We put that on our charters as the overall goal and get those signed. So we have the authority to execute the project. Then as we go out there, we collect data. We do a process map and we collect data to show, time studies, pulling reports. How fast is this going? The lead time, the process time, the cycle time, even sometimes takt time. So just calculate how long stuff takes. After we do that, we have a moment of truth saying, now we heard this was the issue over here. Is the data supporting that that's truly an issue, or is it more of a communication thing? Is it more of a we just need to clarify expectations thing, or is there truly an improvement that needs to be done here with the systems, the process, and the operations? If yes, then we move forward with problem solving, brainstorming, identify areas for opportunity for improvements, and then it climaxes all with a wide-scale implementation. So we make the changes, and then we go collect data again, and we compare the data to what the process is doing now to the CCRs in the original time that we collected up at the front end of the project. Generally speaking, most projects we take on, we want to see a 50% or greater increase. So if you think about, I'm just thinking veteran affairs, right? A lot of them prescribe medications for our soldiers who come home and need some support. If that's taken too long, that can have an adverse effect on them. And we can speed it up by over 50%, making sure that they receive the services, that they've earned. So it's a pretty structured approach. It doesn't have to be, but that's kind of how we generally proceed here at the state.
That's amazing. I love that. Love hearing the benefit that process improvement is having on the state. That's just great. Great to hear. I also have to imagine that it's having a massive impact on the culture, within the state government there. What would you say would be maybe an approach, or how does one go about impacting positive, culture change within an organization like the state of Nebraska?
That's a good question. And the reason it is because, we've all seen how continuous improvement was done, 40, 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it was top down with little consideration to the culture. And what we saw is as soon as the leaders left, the improvements left. People went back to the old way of doing it, oftentimes worse than it was before it was addressed. These days, we tend to lead with that idea of culture, like you were saying. Change management and culture development go hand in hand with continuous improvement. I honestly don't believe you can do one without the other. And I found that, setting good leadership expectations is, relatively easy to do. You communicate it, but then living by what you practice what you preach. If you talk about building trust, then show trust. If you talk about in this continuous improvement, hey guys, we need accountability, we need to make sure everybody shows up, then don't be late if you're the leader. So I think one of the things, and each culture is different. There's not like a set strict rules of it'll work here, it won't work here. It's understand the culture you're in. But if you model the behavior that you think the program needs to see and that the sponsors say need happen and the team says need happen, they will follow suit. Not all at once, right? We've all seen the learning curves and how that works. Books like The Tipping Point with Malcolm Gladwell and some others. It can be a process, and it requires consistency, persistence, and all this kind of stuff. I also found for me personally, because I'm a very direct communicator, I found that taking a couple of minutes to stop and smell the roses and recognize the wins is just huge. Some of these people are super nervous to try something different outside the box. They're willing to. They attend a Kaizen, or they show up to project meetings, or they give their sometimes even contradictory opinions to the common train of thought in the room. That's a huge step for them. For a lot of them, that's a huge step for me sometimes.
Sure.
So to be able to take them aside and kind of tell them, hey, I really appreciate you speaking up. It's interesting seeing the different opinions. Buying them a cup of coffee when the project's over. Bare minimum, just sending an email or a quick phone call saying, hey, thanks for your participation. Please and thank yous. I found this goes a long way. So modeling the behavior, but then also recognizing those who are also exhibiting that behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say modeling the behavior, normally, for us, we talk about leader standard work and what are the behaviors and actions that should be, displayed within a lean organization. And a lot of times what we, recommend as some of those behaviors or actions of leaders are, daily Kaizen activities, standard work audits or developing standard work, Gemba walks, TPM activities, and the list goes on and on. Are those similar to what you would see, with leaders at the state government level? Like, are those the types of behaviors that you're recommending and suggesting when it comes to modeling the behavior, or are they a little bit different, in the state government?
It's the same exact topics. They do look a little bit different because it's government, and even then it looks a little bit different depending on the agency.
Sure.
So again, you go back to an agency that's very kind of regulations driven. Maybe they receive a lot of funding from the federal government, or they receive a lot of funding from certain grants that require that they show certain expectations. A lot of times you do find things like audits are really helpful in that environment because everyone's so driven, not necessarily by the customer's desire, but the regulation and what the expectation for the state to meet. We always try to use Gembas. Especially after any kind of significant improvement activity, but also just because. And it's one of those things where as a practitioner, we need to constantly reinforce and be persistent because the executives, the head of the agencies and so forth, they have exceptionally busy schedules. I'm sure that's everywhere. Oh, yeah. But in government, there's certain factors like the legislature, that's always kind of a topic going on. There's internal audits. There's the newspaper that you wake up one morning, oh my gosh, my priorities have changed. And so having that flexibility to kind of meet them where they're at, but still encouraging them to get out there and touch base with their teams. And setting a consistent culture so they don't think it's like a we got you walk, but it's truly a Gemba walk of, hey, how's this going? I'm checking it out. I think all those tools, standard work is another great one. I especially like the leadership standard work I've seen in the past. Those are a really useful tool. In fact, that's a tool that I've been trying to get together here for about the last 3 or 4 months, just to kind of give some, thoughts and ideas. And again, the application of it can vary very much from agency to agency. Being direct in the patrol environment is very different than being direct in, the Department of Administrative Services, or, Health and Human Services, But the idea of sometimes this clear communication, this precise communication can be really important. So I think all the tools you mentioned are applied here in some way, shape, or form.
Hey everyone, this is Patrick. So sorry to interrupt this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast, but I felt it necessary to take a quick moment and personally invite you to the Lean Solutions Summit on October 2nd through the 4th this fall, 2023. The theme of this year's global summit is leadership, people, purpose, passion. You do not want to miss this amazing experience with the top process improvement experts from your industry. No matter what industry you're working in, this summit has value for you. The summit offers 4 different industry tracks to include healthcare, corporate, higher education and nonprofit, and finally, government. Our opening keynote is Chris McChesney, the lead author of the #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling business book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. The Ops sisters, Kathy Miller and Shannon Carrolls, the authors of Steel Toes and Stilettos, will be joining us, as well as yours truly and over 20 other speakers. The final day of the summit is full of workshops, and there are limited seats for a tour of Menlo Innovations with Richard Sheridan and Zingerman's Mail Order with Dr. Jeff Leiker, author of The Toyota Way. Early bird pricing is now available at FindLean Solutions/Summit-2023, or you can check the show notes for a link. Now, back to the show. Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, one of the areas that I hear a lot of struggles with in many different industries is sustainability of change initiatives. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts, any kind of insight that you might be able to give our listeners on, how to sustain change initiatives. It could be within the state government, but I'm sure that whatever you're using there probably applies to most people listening in. So what would you say from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, it largely does boil down to the sponsors and the practitioners and the leaders of this stuff. When I started this continuous improvement journey, I was actually an operations guy who, I didn't believe in it. I thought it was a waste of time. And after my boss challenged me to be exposed to it, I became a believer really quick. The team was functioning better than I ever had. The process was truly amazing. And so I started getting into it, and I started this in the private sector for many years before the public sector. Mm-hmm. And one mindset I've always learned to train others who are leading programs, or for myself, reminding myself positive affirmations in the morning, it's never done. It's never done. Sometimes people feel like, hey, if we get 40 projects and 50 million savings, all right, now we can coast. But you apply things like theory of constraints, or just the idea that every time you improve something, by default, you've exposed another thing that needs improved. Even culturally, we have people that come in, cabinet members come in, they stay sometimes 4 or 8 years and then move on. We can't get in that coasting mindset. We need to make sure that we get, or if it's a VP or a CEO or whoever with the executive authority that supports you, we need to make sure we get all people. Like, we're showing the value for the executives. We're showing the value for the frontline staff. We're showing the value for the middle managers. We're showing value for the different organizations that are stakeholders and partners with a lot of our companies, whether it's the people who produce the bumpers and send them to the car factory, or if it's, the recipients of certain services from the federal side that partner with state government. Whatever the situation, it's the consistent idea of, we need people that are going to come in every day to push, and there'll be some smooth days, no doubt, but it's naturally organizations are naturally in a backslide kind of mindset. It takes that leadership and that driving to push it forward. And even a healthy organization, all it takes is 1 or 2, adjustments, and all of a sudden that healthy culture can disappear overnight. And so it's just that constant situational awareness, that constant desire. We're not all 100% every day, but we can certainly give it our best each day to be a positive force, but also, continue to show them the value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got to make a big difference having the governor of the state, driving continuous improvement initiatives and making it a priority for the state, and then obviously establishing, putting someone like you into position as the director of operational excellence. I mean, those are things that, definitely establish a priority, right, for process improvement within each of the different agencies. Do you feel like that's something that definitely adds to the sustainment of the work that you guys are doing?
Yes and no. I think the idea of having that very high level support, it certainly does make it easier when the support's there.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having 3 follow-up meetings with another key executive, we can just have one meeting, invite all the right people, and one way or the other, we're all going to have straight advice as to which direction to go next.
Right.
However, that if we rely on only that can waver throughout the years,
Mm-hmm.
especially in government or even with CEOs and VPs and stuff. The average tenure in the private sector for VPs, it's a few years. They don't usually stick around 20, 25 years. And so when they come in, they might be all this energy and excited. And then in that last 6 months, they might lose some of it. Well, if we relied on in government, I mean, every 4 years there's elections, and then oftentimes new executive staff. So if we rely on only them, I think we might be setting ourselves up for failure in the long run, but it sure makes it easier in the short run. But I think that ties all the way back to, yes, use that support if you have it. If you don't have that, make that one of your goals is to actually get an executive sponsor. You'll notice overnight how different it is. It's different when you reach out and say, hey, would you like to do this continuous improvement stuff? Versus if your VP of operations or logistics reach out and says, hey, I have a guy here I can send over, or girl I can send over that'll help you improve by 30, 40, 50%. It's just a very different dialogue.
Sure.
So I would definitely work on getting an executive sponsor, but then don't coast on the idea of having an executive sponsor. Make sure you're personally engaging, your team's engaging with the middle managers, the frontline staff, hearing what they're saying, understanding why they don't want to do it, or if they do want to do it, what their expectations are. It's as much listening as it is doing.
Yeah. Powerful advice. Thank you. Appreciate that. Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, 20 plus years. You've had to have had challenges and some wins over the years. Could you identify, your greatest challenge, or maybe your top few challenges? Maybe what comes to mind when you think about challenges in process improvement that you've been faced with over the years?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, and the reason it comes to mind is we're kind of dealing with in the last 12 months here, is sometimes people have good intentions and they want to do continuous improvement, and they think they're doing the right thing by just going out there and forcing it and saying we're going to do this because I'm the executive and here's how we're going to do it. The problem, at least in a modern day, organizational cultures, people want to be, guided. They want to be led. They want autonomy. They want trust. They want the ability to make, their own decision within a framework of what's acceptable in the company. And sometimes when we lead change efforts or continuous improvement, with good intentions, if we rely on that stuff or we kind of lead with that stuff, it can do a lot of detriment. And here's the thing with change management efforts: a lot of times you're going to have to fight to make a first impression a second time. A lot of times those first impressions are very hard to undo. And sometimes it even takes a different leader on the team to maybe kind of circle back to those folks. So it kind of goes back to my experience, the way I practice continuous improvement. It's as much about the relationships and showing the value and making it easy to use. And that's not one conversation. That is series of conversations. It's mistakes are going to happen. I've seen leaders in pretty high positions at big teams that let's do continuous improvement, which is a good thing in itself. But when they get down to it, it's basically like a dictatorship that we're going to do this, and it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate with the team, which, it's their team. They can do what they want, but if they really want to get continuous improvement to, penetrate the entire organization or at least their team, we have to focus on that value creation. We have to focus on showing them why. Hey, we're going to do this, but let me show you why. Look what it did to my numbers when I did it back at this other company. Taking time and always stepping back and helping them continue their journey. I would say that's something that helping coach those leaders has been a challenge. Over the years. It's something that we've had several successes. We've had some with marginal success. But it can sometimes be a difficult task to come in each day and give that feedback to the leaders. But it's a worthwhile task. It is definitely something to take the time on. It's not always the funnest conversations. They call them crucial conversations, or however you want to label it, but it's stuff that needs said. And most of the time, in my experience, a year and a half down the road, they get it. It takes a while to process. They get it, and they actually become some of the best practitioners of this cultural change, positive cultural change, while doing continuous improvement. So that's probably the greatest challenge. I think some of the wins we've had. I'm definitely proud of the Green Belt program and the Black Belt program here at the state. We do use a belt system, but it's as much as a job classification system. The Green Belt program got off the ground. We started getting a lot of traction with it, and within a very short time period, all the code agency directors, which means underneath the governor, they all started seeing the value of it. So the Green Belt program really helped us establish that. With the launch of the Black Belt program, we are now doing projects at the enterprise level where, sometimes it's very difficult to do a project across 4 or 5 organizations, but now we have the capacity to do so. So that's probably my greatest win, is really the development of those 2 programs.
Love it. Yeah, you guys are doing some really great work at the state. Love the stuff that you are doing. Love the results of the work that you guys are doing. You guys are really setting the stage for other state government entities to look and say, hey, these guys are doing it right. So definitely hats off to you guys. One other thing I want to talk about before we wrap up today, Matt. So shameless plug here. We are hosting the Lean Solutions Global Summit first week of October here in Michigan. And during that summit, as part of that summit, we have 4 tracks. We have a healthcare track, we have a higher ed track, we have the corporate track, and then we have our government track. And you are one of our track speakers for the government track. So I'm super excited to have you come out and share, some of your insights around the work that you guys have done at the state of Nebraska, and maybe share some stories or some different, maybe some more challenges, some more wins that you guys have had. So looking forward to seeing you, out here in October for the summit.
Yeah, very much so. I look forward to it as well. It's always a great place to connect and network, learn things, learn how to view organizational issues in different ways. So very much look forward to being a part of it and meeting new people.
Absolutely. And as far as the work that you guys are doing at the state, if someone's interested to learn a little bit more about the work that you guys are doing from a process improvement perspective, where would they go? You guys have a very specific webpage, don't you, that's dedicated to some of the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah. If you Google Nebraska Center of Operational Excellence, you'll find the link for our homepage. Also, if you ever want to reach out to me directly, my email is Matthew, Mathew, Singh, SINGH, at nebraska.gov, Gov. Feel free to email me directly, or check out the website. We have a lot of educational tools there. We have a lot of how-to videos on leadership. We have past summits that we've had information from guest speakers, all sorts of cool stuff. So I encourage you to go check it out. If you have any questions, reach out, and hopefully it adds value to your journey.
Love it. We'll definitely put each of those links in the show notes for this episode. So if anyone's interested to reach out to Matt or to learn more about what's happening at the state of Nebraska with the Center of Excellence, you can go right to the show notes and grab a link to that. And then, Matt, I will see you in October. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person once again and connecting there. And otherwise, thanks for being a guest on the show once again.
Yeah, you betcha. Thanks for having me, and look forward to seeing you in the near future.
All right. Take care, Matt. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.